There's a particular kind of dread that spreads through a corporate boardroom when you realize your entire business model is about to collapse in real time. Picture it, executives watching a broadcast from South Florida, refreshments untouched. Nobody's checking their phones anymore. Because what's unfolding on that field is financially catastrophic if it continues for another 20 minutes. That's what happened around minute 103. Not Argentina's problem. Not even Messi's problem, though. He was certainly aware of it. This was the nightmare scenario of the people signing the checks. This was the moment when a nation you couldn't spot on a globe was methodically dismantling the defending world champions. And worse, they were doing it with organization and structure, not luck. Let me paint you the full picture of what was genuinely on the line. The arithmetic is cold. Argentina holds the #1 ranking. They've won the last tournament, they're the defending champions, the reigning kings, the team everyone expects to contend for another title. Across the pitch stands Cape Verde. 550,000 people live there. 550,000, the entire population is smaller than New York City's daily subway ridership. It's their debut tournament appearance ever. They're ranked outside the top 60 teams globally. On paper, this shouldn't have been competitive. This should have been the equivalent of a professional boxer sparring with someone who took a single martial arts class. The script was written before kickoff. Argentina handles business, moves forward, everyone goes home satisfied. That's the story that gets filed and forgotten. But here's where real football reveals itself. Scripts are worthless when the ball starts moving. The opening act went according to plan. 29 minutes in, Messi receives possession in dangerous territory, stabilizes it with that surgically precise left foot of his, and places it past the goalkeeper with the kind of casual precision that's made him the planet's most watched athlete. 1-0. The 20th World Cup goal of his legacy. Nobody else is even in the same conversation. Argentina blinks once and they're up. Business as usual. The machine is oiled and ready. Then Cape Verde tore up the script. You're approaching the hour mark when Duroy Darte, a name barely anyone watching had heard before that moment, winds up his leg and fires something into the far corner that changes the entire atmosphere inside Hard Rock Stadium. 1-1, and this is when the emotional temperature of the match shifts, not for the underdogs, for the champions. You could feel it in the way the Argentine midfield suddenly started to press higher, the urgency that crept into their possession. This wasn't supposed to happen. This match was supposed to follow a predetermined arc. Instead, an unfamiliar team had just announced themselves as genuine competition. The regulation 90 doesn't produce another goal. The ball gets kicked back and forth, chances come and go, and the whistle sends everyone into extra time. At this point, something dangerous is developing on the field. The underdog isn't panicking, they're playing with belief, and Argentina is starting to feel weight. Then Argentina seemed to crack the code. 93 minutes, Landro Martinez gets a shot from a chaotic corner situation and rifles it above the keeper. 2-1. The stadium exhales, order has been restored. The fairy tale is being written to its conclusion, Argentina will be fine. The machine will advance. The 103rd minute is when history nearly rewrites itself. Sidney Lopes Cabral picks up the ball on the left flank, cuts inside toward goal, and executes a right foot strike with such geometric perfection that even watching it later, you know you're witnessing something special. The ball curves exactly where his body told it to go. It hits the far corner, and it doesn't come back out. 2-2 again, this is the moment where context becomes essential. 500,000 people their first World Cup ever, drawing level with the defending world champions in extra time. With penalty kicks now a real possibility, with their entire tournament narrative about to pivot from how they performed to how close they came to the most stunning upset in the competition's history. 17 minutes remained. Argentina was staring directly at humiliation. The greatest player on the planet was suddenly 17 minutes away from hearing his name attached to the most catastrophic exit of his career. And somewhere, people whose job description includes protecting the tournament's commercial interests had stopped whatever they were doing. Because here's what gets stated quietly in hallways but never on broadcast. This tournament is being held in America because America is the growth market. This tournament has every marketing dollar pointed at convincing casual American viewers that soccer matters. And standing in that stadium less than an hour from Miami was Messi, who plays professional football 60 minutes away at Inter Miami. He isn't just a great player in this competition. He's at the gravitational center of the entire American TV strategy. If Messi exits in the round of 32, eliminated by an island nation that most casual viewers couldn't name, the pitch completely falls apart, the merchandising narrative breaks. The casual fan interest that's been painstakingly built collapses. The entire sales structure that markets this tournament to people who still don't fully understand the offside rule goes sideways. For 20 minutes, that catastrophe was genuinely viable. The 111th minute arrives, and Argentina reaches deep into their championship experience. Messi swings a corner into the box. Christian Romero rises above the crowd. The ball deflects off a Cape Verde defender, D. Borges, and slides past his own goalkeeper. 3-2. Argentina finally breaks through. But here's what stings about this particular goal. It's an own goal. The ball that defeats Cape Verde comes from Cape Verde. After everything, after two comebacks, after dragging the world champions through 120 minutes of absolute combat, after proving they belonged, the goal that finally ends their tournament is scored by their own defender. There is no crueler way for a dream of that magnitude to die. Even with that goal, even knowing the odds have shifted, Cape Verde didn't surrender. They kept pushing. They forced corner after corner. They made Argentina's goalkeeper work until the very final seconds. A loose ball found the box. A Cape Verde player might have had it. The offside flag went up by the smallest margin. By the time the final whistle sounded, Argentine players were physically destroyed, 120 minutes deep in Miami humidity, their bodies depleted by a team they were supposed to dismiss by halftime. Now here's what matters. When you strip away the narrative and look at the actual football, Cape Verde wasn't fortunate. They didn't luck their way into this position. The expected goals metric, the cold-blooded measure of which team created legitimate scoring opportunities, was brutally one-sided. Argentina at roughly 216, Cape Verde at approximately 0.45. They created almost nothing offensively, and yet they still pushed a dynasty to the absolute brink. The answer sits in their defensive architecture. Their goalkeeper, a 40-year-old named Voiceover, made 8 saves, not 8 routine saves. 8 stops that had no business resulting in the ball staying out of the net. He denied free kicks that should have ended the conversation. He made reaction saves from point-blank range. He was the single most important factor in keeping his nation alive. This isn't even Cape Verde's first statement in this tournament. Their group stage included matches against Spain and Uruguay, teams with serious pedigree, teams with players in top 5 European leagues. Cape Verde didn't just participate. They demonstrated organization, structure, and tactical discipline. But the broader sports world hadn't noticed yet. That's not because Cape Verde isn't serious. It's because Cape Verde doesn't fit the traditional hierarchy that professional football has built. Small nations don't do this. Debut teams don't hold their ground against reigning champions. Underdog narratives are supposed to have an expiration date. Except Cape Verde hadn't read the industry rulebook. The fairest assessment, Argentina were ultimately the worthy victors. They controlled the match. They created the superior chances. Messi delivered when it mattered most. Champions have this characteristic. They find ways to advance even when the night is ugly and the opponent is better than expected. Argentina advanced because they're genuinely excellent at football. But existing right beside that truth is another one, equally honest. Argentina came within a curling shot and 20 minutes of experiencing the most damaging knockout in World Cup history. That own goal, that specific moment separated them from a narrative that would follow Messi for the rest of his career. Remember when Cape Verde knocked out Argentina? Would become the first sentence of his legacy, not the 20th paragraph. And from FIFA's perspective, that catastrophe was fully operational. It wasn't hypothetical, it was happening. The sponsorship implications were real. The broadcast implications were real. The trajectory of casual American fan engagement was at risk. For context, this World Cup is being staged in a market that FIFA has chased for decades. American TV audiences are still learning the basics of how the sport functions. The casual viewer isn't there for tactical complexity. They're there because they recognize one name. That name is Messi. That name commands jerseys and social media follows and broadcast ratings. If that name is attached to a first-round exit, the foundation shifts. Messi's presence in the tournament isn't incidental to the business model. It's foundational. So when he was 17 minutes from elimination, when the video being shot in that Miami stadium was potentially heading toward the greatest upset in football history, the implications spread far beyond the sport itself. The ultimate outcome, Messi lived, Argentina lived. They advanced to Atlanta to face Egypt in their next fixture. The commercial machinery continued functioning. The Golden Goose remained alive to sell another round of experiences and jerseys and broadcast hours to audiences still developing their relationship with the sport. Cape Verde's head coach needed just a sentence or two when the final whistle came. We showed our identity. That might be the most perfect statement you could make about a team that had just spent 2 hours proving they belonged on this stage. 500,000 people back home were watching, plus thousands of neutral fans who couldn't have named a single player on Cape Verde's roster 3 weeks prior. Those neutral fans weren't going to forget what they'd witnessed. This was the best underdog performance this tournament produced in its initial stages, a nation making their debut tournament appearance, coming from nowhere, genuinely nowhere in terms of global football consciousness, and almost eliminating the defending world champions through nothing but superior organization and refusal to surrender. That narrative doesn't get filed as a footnote. That narrative gets remembered as the night an underdog nation taught the entire world why you never assume anything about football, about competition, about how a group of humans with shared purpose and tactical structure can challenge any opponent regardless of ranking or history or global profile. The story isn't that Cape Verde lost. The story is that Cape Verde forced a dynasty to play 120 minutes of football and nearly murdered them in the process. That's the memory that travels. That's the conversation that continues in bars and living rooms and stadiums for years. That's the upset that, even in defeat, becomes the tournament highlight, the moment when the script was genuinely in danger. Argentina won because that's what great teams do. But Cape Verde gained something more permanent. They announced themselves to the world. They proved that the traditional hierarchy of international football is more fragile than people assume. They showed that belief, organization, and physical commitment can compensate for being ranked outside the top 60. They made their name eternal, even in defeat. And yes, somewhere in a FIFA office, they're probably grateful that the ending went the way it did. Because if that curling shot had found the corner instead of bouncing away by a breath, if that loose ball in the box had been onside instead of by margins invisible to the naked eye, if one or two moments had gone differently, this World Cup would have undergone a financial earthquake. Instead, it became the greatest near miss of the tournament. The night that proves sometimes the underdog doesn't need to win to become unforgettable. That's the truth of the 103rd minute in Miami. That's why it matters. That's why it'll be part of World Cup lore, not as a footnote, but as the night when 500,000 people nearly toppled a dynasty.